I started to want to ascend, I go, oh God. I started remembering that I couldn't go back with the works I had done. Like there was nothing to go back and talk about. There was no judgment, but I had realized there was a contract that I had. And in that contract, and it wasn't something that I knew intellectually. It was like, as he was just presently with me, my soul was remembering very slowly, like, oh God, this is all, I signed on for this, like you said, Lori. And it was, you know, I signed on for this. This is a simulation. It's real to the body, but the spirit is still unharmed. Like, as I was going through it, I recognized we're gonna watch this like a movie afterward, and we're gonna watch the play by like the blooper reel. We're gonna watch the play by play. What am I doing? And I just thought I can't I can't die this way.
My guest today is Dr. Sunshine Frost, who has a medical degree and she also has a degree in theocentric psychology. She is also a four-time Reiki healer. She has a paramedic degree and she is what they call an international channeler medium, having done over 150,000 readings, some of them famous cases that you would know. So, Sunshine, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Miss Laura.
This is going to be such an incredible conversation. My audience loves listening to people who've had near-death experiences, and we're going to start there for you because you had one at a fairly young age. And usually when I talk to people about their near-death experiences, 17 is kind of a young age, but it's old enough that you had a life before this. So what were you like before this near-death experience?
That's a great question, Miss Lori. I did not have a good life. I came from a really, really bad, negative home life. My mom left at 3 years old. My father was an alcoholic. I was kind of put with the family, and I went through 6 years of sexual abuse and trauma and alcoholism. It was really bad, and I was finally taken away from my family at around 13 years old and placed into foster care. I had all of the bad tendencies that a teenager with a lot of those problems would have: abandonment issues, got into drugs, had promiscuity issues. I was a cutter. I had an eating disorder. I mean, use the gamut. They had labeled me bipolar. At that time, I think every teenager is up and down. I don't think that's a fair assumption just to say if you're documenting an 11 to 13-year-old, don't label them. But yeah, I had all of those experiences. I didn't feel loved. I didn't feel wanted. My mom had left. My dad really didn't want a child. They had lost my brother 13 months earlier, and he never recovered, and my mom never recovered. So it was just a really rough life. I really didn't know why I was here.
Wow, that's a lot to bear. And so it's no surprise with how you wound up having your near-death experience, but also based on our conversations before, I think that this may be part of your plan.
I know that it's part of my plan, and I didn't even know there was a plan. I thought it was like maybe an accident, like I was a whoops. Like my brother probably should have survived. He would have been the golden child of this family, and he didn't. And so I was born very early and premature. My father didn't even come to the hospital because he didn't want to bury another child. They had just had my brother's funeral with a casket and the whole 9 yards. He was born fully developed, but stillbirth. And so they had never recovered from that. So I kind of thought I was like an oopsie, like an oopsie baby. And especially if you're told that, never tell your kids that. But if you're told something like that, it so affects the energy, that you perceive yourself in.
Sure, of course it would. So why don't you share your near-death experience in any way that you feel like sharing it?
So it's a pretty simple, straightforward story. I had got involved with running away. I had gotten the foster care, and we were on a reunification with my family again. I was there for about a 2-week visit to reunify, and I'd gotten in a fight with my dad again, and I decided to leave with an older girlfriend, and we went to play pool. And while we were there, now I was 17, And my friend was either right at 18, or I think she was right around 18, either a week before or a week after her birthday. And we were at a pool hall that allowed minors up till 10 o'clock. And so we had met these two older guys. There was actually a couple of guys in the group, but two particularly stood out to us and had kept kind of flirting with my friend. And he was giving her Jack and Coke. Even though we just had Coke, he was pouring the drinks into her drink, and then she was giving them to me as well. So within 20 minutes, I was really like super intoxicated. You know, an hour and a half into this, I was super hot. I was in the bathroom, kind of feeling like I wanted to throw up and sick at this pool hall. The guys had suggested that we go back to their place for me to get better, to get right, is what they said. I really, at this time, even though I was around 17, I hadn't really experimented with drugs a whole lot. To be quite honest, I had never really got involved with heavy drugs. I had drank and smoked cigarettes, but I had never been involved with really, because we didn't have money. I mean, honestly, you have to have money or means to kind of get into that. And so that wasn't where I was at, but we went back to their place, which turned out to be a hotel room, not a house. The older guy, he was probably looking back, maybe late 20s to early 30s. But the two gentlemen that were with us, one looked much younger, but he was actually around probably 22 or 23. They were both very legal, and the other one maybe 24 to 25. And we got there, I wasn't feeling well. So I was laying on the sofa, you know, that spinning, sick feeling that you have. And so my girlfriend said, I'm just going to take her to the bathroom. And he said, well, yeah, we'll get her straightened out, because they wanted to party with us. That was the whole thing. And I was ruining the plan. So they had went in the bathroom and actually laid out some drugs for me to do. And I had never, at that time, I had never, you know, snorted anything or been involved with that. So my girlfriend was making me a bath. She said, get in this cold bath, do this, you're going to sober up really quick. That's the idea. When you're intoxicated, they wanted to put me in the cold bath. She wanted me to do this substance, and then I would be fine. So she told me what to do this substance and get in the bath, and I'll come back and check on you in, you know, 15 minutes or so. So we'd ran the bath, and it was a dollar bill, and I did what I was going to do. And within just a few seconds, I felt like a numbness go up, and it was numb on one side. And then I thought, okay, so I only could do one on one side, and I did the other half on the other. And within just a few minutes, I had my whole face went numb, and my nose just exploded. I started bleeding out of both nostrils. I started to panic. I grabbed my face. I didn't want to be a baby. I was the only kid there. And I thought, well, don't cry and embarrass yourself. So I thought, well, I'll just get in the bathtub. And, you know, I had laid down in the bath. It was ice cold. My body was freaking out. I could see my heart pounding, and my heart started skipping. And I was laid back in the tub, and I'm very tall. So I had one kind of leg over the side. My head was in the corner like this, and the faucet was by my feet. And that was kind of the last part I remember, was my heart just, I was thinking I'm going to die. I thought that, and my heart stopped. And I remember just having a sinking feeling. It was first fear. I was very scared, but I was very high. And then it was as if all that left me. And I've heard people say that if you have a near death when you're intoxicated or inebriated, or you're on some kind of substance, that's what accounts for the near death. But I can assure you, I was completely sober the minute that my consciousness left the body. I was completely sober. Mine is different in that I didn't go up. I started sinking down through the tub. I I was sinking down through the metal. It's almost like I could taste the metal cast iron tub. I went through, I could feel the concrete going downward into the earth, going down, just being pulled, like my spirit was falling slowly out of my body. It was like it couldn't maintain it, and it was going downward through the floor. And I thought, oh my God, I'm going to hell. You know, this is what it's about. I had done this. I'm here. I mean, I thought about it. I'm naked in a hotel room with strangers using drugs. This is what I deserve. You know, and even to this day, I never talk about this without feeling that sadness of how judgmental I was for myself, you know. And I stayed there what felt like a very long time, because there is no sense of time when you explain these things to others. They don't quite grasp it because it's such a infinite experience. And so I was there for quite a bit, and I remember thinking, well, you know what? I didn't have any tormentors. It was nothing, but it was nothingness as well. The only thing that was there was my own mind and consciousness. And because I believed I deserved this, because it had been so indoctrinated, I was born into sin. I needed to be redeemed. I needed to live a life that was worthy of salvation. It was just such an ingrained experience. And having been a young girl that had, if you or ever been a man or a woman that's ever had abuse and trauma at a young age, they interpret that and internalize it as an unworthiness. And so that had been part of my, mental landscape. And so I was there for quite a bit. And I decided to sing Jesus Loves Me. It was the only thing I could think to muster was Jesus loves me. Like I didn't love me, but maybe Jesus would love me, and that would be enough. And I remember just singing that song and I began to ascend. It was like just going up. Unbelievable. I couldn't believe it. I'm like, this is a hack. This is a spirit hack. It's working. But I went through and I do remember seeing my body. And I actually have not watched very many near death. I've watched maybe 10 or 15 in my lifetime. I've read Don Piper's book, like 90, I think it's 90 minutes in heaven. Um, and I got to work with Dr. Raymond Moody after the fact, and we've done some things together. But I saw my body. And a lot of people say they feel a disgust for their body, like nothing, no attachment. I didn't feel that. I felt such sadness for how I had treated that body because she was 17. She was so beautiful. And yet I thought she was fat. I thought she was unattractive. She wasn't smart enough. All of these motherly things came over me in my oversoul. You know, looking down at that, I thought, God, what did I do to her? What has been done? What have I done? And I felt sadness and sorrow because I was so beautiful. In that moment, I saw that I had this beauty, this eternal radiant beauty as a human, as a form. And so I went up a little above that. I always say 2 levels, whatever that means. I just remember it being 2 levels above. And then there was a beautiful entity. It was a male presence. People say, what was the name? What did it look like? I can't tell you that, but I don't know if it was my spirit guide. I'm pretty sure I intimately knew this person and they intimately knew me, but I couldn't tell you who it was. And I said, I can't go like this. But I can't go back either. I can't go back to this life. It's just been horrible. I'm like, I can't do this anymore. I don't feel connected to anyone or anything. I'm drifting. I'm a waste. I remember just thinking, I've done nothing with my life. That was the thing, is I felt I had done nothing with my life. I had never really helped anybody. I thought I was pretty selfish at that time. I was really egocentric, materialistic, greedy. I would steal things if I wanted cigarettes, or if I found $1, I would be the one to keep it because I felt, well, no one had taken care of me. Why, no one would ever. I had been homeless already by 17 3 times, and I was living in a 24-hour laundromat in the back of it under the table to stay warm at night. I had really been through it. And I was like, I don't see a reason in coming back. But then when I started to want to ascend, I go, oh God, I started remembering that I started remembering that I couldn't go back with the works I had done. Like there was nothing to go back and talk about. There was no judgment, but I had realized there was a contract that I had. And in that contract, and it wasn't something that I knew intellectually. It was like, as he was just presently with me, my soul was remembering very slowly, like, oh God, this is all, I signed on for this, like you said, Lori. And it was, you know, I signed on for this. This is a simulation. It's real to the body, but the spirit is still unharmed. Like, as I was going through it, I recognized we're gonna watch this like a movie afterward, and we're gonna watch the play by, like the blooper reel. We're gonna watch the play by play. What am I doing? And I just thought, I can't die this way, because my grandmother was the only one that had really ever loved me. I had felt she had always loved me. There was no judgment. You know how grandmothers are. You can't do anything wrong, and it doesn't matter what you do. I mean, I was playing with a lighter when I was 7 and almost burned down our whole house. I lit the lampshade on fire when I was 7, playing with my dad's cigarettes and lighter because he had passed out early and I was still awake by myself. And when I woke him up and then he told my grandmother and she goes, "Oh, she did. There's no way she did that." And I admitted to it. And my grandmother was still like, "That's not possible. It was a spark." She just loved me. And I thought it would kill her to find out that her only grandchild that had survived died in a hotel room naked. I just kept thinking of the Marilyn Monroe story, to die at this young age in this horrible way with total strangers that would probably not even call paramedics. You know what I mean? It was just like, I don't want to die this way for her sake. But I said, I can't go back. And I felt like in that moment, I was still able to, they didn't force me either way. It was not what I thought. There was no force to go either direction. It was almost as if he was telling me, and this isn't something I remember then, but knowing what I know now is a channel and being able to access that information so much easier. And my consciousness has expanded with my knowledge. So the terms and things that I learned at 17, I couldn't really fully, I didn't have a framework to understand them because everything I learned was fear, sin, hell, judgment. And I was a woman, so I was deprived of I mean, everything was so societal, and my framework was not able to handle this construct. My construct was too small to handle the consciousness. So it was as if he said, "Let's sit a little while." And I remember going to a place above this place, above the 2 levels I was already at. And at the 2 levels, I did forget that he did show me I could go back or I could go ahead and stay and go forward. And he showed me, that's when I saw my grandmother would receive the news that I had passed. And it was very detrimental. Like she had a heart attack a year or 2 later, which she did have a heart attack, but it was like she lived for another 15 years. Okay. And I remember that if I stayed, they showed me at that time, which I don't remember any of them now, but it was as if I was there for quite a long time. And they kept showing me people I was supposed to meet and fix. I had contracts, multitudes. It was as if I had sat there for, I couldn't, so long. It must have been like 1,000 contracts or more. You're gonna almost like step off the curb and there's gonna be a young girl there and she's being abused and you're gonna give her $20 and get her on a bus. That happened. There's a couple of these incidents years later I do remember, but far few of them I don't remember. But I remember him sitting with me and he said, "You can go and there's no judgment, but if you stay, these are the contracts that need you." It wasn't that I needed they weren't all for me. They showed me that I was in a guardian life path. So was a choice to come and not, I thought I was like karmically indebted, like I must have been an axe murderer or something to go through such horrendous conditions. But that wasn't it at all. That I was a guardian spirit, and a guardian spirit is what a lot of people on this timeline are, actually. That's why there's so much enlightenment. I realize that now. So many teachers, more healers than we've ever had, crystal children, these androgynous souls. We have so many amazing activators and things. But at that time, they showed me that guardian spirits don't have to come back, but we're choosing to do so to help elevate the consciousness of others. So I thought I was under a karmic punishment. It turns out, no, that those spirits just take on a higher, they said I was a level 7 life path. So level 7s have to have abuse, neglect, abandonment, isolation, rejection, and then enlightenment. So there was one more. I can't remember the 7th, but that was it. He was like, you have to have abuse, neglect, abandonment, isolation, rejection, enlightenment, and there was one other. But he showed me that in the process that it's okay, like you've only went through 4. And I'm thinking, oh my God, I've only been through 4. I can't do this. And he goes, well, you could leave, but you could stay. This is what will happen if you leave. And it was the end. It was just my grandmother finding out I had died. Small funeral, not a big deal. Nobody really came. Just a few friends that I'd had. They were all kind of street people. And then I had no living family members, just 3, and there was no others. And then the other contract was like, well, you'll meet a girl, you'll give her $20. Then also they showed me that I would go into outreach, which I did. I actually went into sex work and started going to strip clubs, doing a lot of rescue work with those girls, helping them. And they had showed me that. And I was 20 when I started doing that, because I came out of that lifestyle. So I was trying to go back in just to give a little bit of help. And I remember seeing all these contracts and I thought, God, I don't want to let these people down. Because I knew that their soul and my soul had made the contract before we came down here. I didn't know how, and that did not fit in my religious construct whatsoever. I didn't understand that, but I just knew from the watching it, there was multiple contracts. And so I didn't make a decision right then. And he said, let's kind of go sit for a minute, but there was no words. It was all thought. It was a community experience. Like if my soul had said no at that moment, we wouldn't have done it. Everything was in singular oneness, is singularity. And that's what heaven is. It's singularity of love. And that's what we're trying to gain a little bit more of here, right? So I go up there and I sit, and there was a park, and I remember this very clearly. There was these beautiful, beautiful, everything is beautiful. The earth is an archetype of heaven, not the other way around. People here forget heaven. So like, what is it like in heaven? And I go, it's everything we have here, a million times greater, with 1,000 things that's so much better than you could never understand because you forget. The greatest temples, the greatest places, the most beautiful wonders, they're all there in enormity. Everything's much bigger, enormous, and there's a sound that permeates everything at all times, everywhere. And I know now that that sound is the frequency of healing. That's why we can't get sick or die over there. When they say, oh, we never get sick, we never age, we never die. True. That's true. But no one talks about why. It's not just that we die, it's that the frequency of everything makes music. I remember as I was walking, there was multitudes of trees around this great, like a park, almost like Mild Square Park type of setting. And every one of the trees made a different sound. Like I keep these chimes on my desk. It would be like that at the same time as a harp, at the same time as voices. Everything made sound. But that tinkling is like the grass blades had a beautiful harmonic vibration. The plants, I didn't touch anything but the grass I was walking on. Well, I wasn't really walking either. I didn't really have a body, or I wasn't aware of I wasn't aware of my physical body because I had left it. But I remember the trees made a noise that was like this, like I said, like this chime, and everything had a noise and a frequency, and it was healing. It was constantly radiating. And everybody was in constant vibrational. It's hard to describe, but the frequency was moving through and out everything. And that is one of the great truths of heaven, is that's why you can't get sick or age, because it's constantly renewing your cellular, it's renewing all of your cellular, it's not even DNA at that point, but you have spiritual DNA to doing that. And we know that now through frequency and harmony of music, we're finally getting into that. We're finally getting the crystals. We're finally getting the flow, the vibrations of healing. But it was there. And I sat in a park and I saw animals, which I was very happy to see. Dogs, especially dogs. There were so many dogs and cats there, I guess, because they're domestic. And so we love them and they become part of the heavenly landscape. But there was children, and people said there's no children in heaven. I don't agree with that. I saw so many children. And I saw many people that were young, but I could tell they were grandparents. They were young, old souls, if that makes sense. They looked as young as you or I, but they were of an older soul. And just through their aura, you could tell they were a guardian spirit. And it was years and years later. I mean, we're talking 20 years later before I started doing readings for St. Jude's kids. I started doing my first 200 readings were for children that had died of cancer, to their families, to just bring some comfort. Because the first reading I ever did was for a little boy that died in surgery when I was there at surgery. So I only wanted to read for children and only for their families. And I didn't want to do this as a profession. But I remember their children being there. And I thought, if I remembered, the church had taught me everybody dies at 30, or they look like they're 30, and everybody's a sentinel being. And there was no really explanation for children in heaven. Have you ever heard that there are children in heaven, Lori?
Yes, I actually have. I've heard that many times, and I've watched, listened to, and read so many different accounts, but yes.
And I remember saying, I must have said this, obviously, when I keep saying I said it, I want to always preface there was no words. We weren't like making this contact. It was instantaneous. I always look at the figure eight, that infinity symbol is the energy goes out to that consciousness and then it moves back into my consciousness and it's a flow. But what was so beautiful is I've never quit telling the story. These were the unwanted souls and these were the left behind grandparents. So it's like the unwanted souls of children or babies that die of abuse, neglect, abortion, whatever it may be. Their souls didn't get the opportunity to come down fully and incarnate. There's no judgment necessarily that I saw to that, but just they were awaiting their turn because either their whole soul group was on earth or they didn't have the family that was picked for them to go through their simulation or their opportunity life. So they were with these loved ones, their spirit guardians on the other side, awaiting their soul's chance to come down. So they were very close. They had already either incarnated into the child, or they were embodying the child, or they were coming back off earth still in that childlike state. So I thought that was interesting. And I remember there being many levels to heaven, so many, it was beyond what anybody could ever see. It goes back and back and back, but it gets more and more and more beautiful. Like all the paintings you see of Greece with the mountains or the vistas, it was all very beautiful. And as I sat there, we kind of talked about many things. And I just remember I wasn't allowed to remember much of it. It was a very long conversation. I felt I was there for a month, maybe more. It was so long. I can't tell you the time, but there was love and there was an acceptance. And I kind of said, I thought you would judge me. And he goes, why? You already did. I remember
Wow.
that as still being so powerful, even today with all of my clients. I always try to embody that. Why would, that's what he said. Why would I do that? You already did. That's why I'd had that hellish type of experience. I wasn't tormented, but I felt alone and unworthy. And so that reflected my near death was that I was to be alone and unworthy. I was unwanted. And because I had made that such a part of my, and I didn't make it, but it had happened to be part of my mindset. That's what it had filled me with. So when I decided to come back, I said, I cannot go back. My life has been too hard. I can't do this twice. And he said, I said, you have to give me a purpose or I don't know why I'm here. Like I can't come back to earth if I don't have a purpose because it's too hard here. It's incredibly hard if you don't know why you're here. And if you don't have a purpose that's greater than yourself, then every time you're sad or depressed or upset, you're going to lose that drive or that inspiration. So he said, don't worry, we'll give you a purpose. And I go, well, how will I know? And he goes, you'll know. Like, and he laughed almost like, yeah, you'll know. Don't worry. We'll give you it. And I said, but how will people, listen to me? And he goes, we programmed your voice. And to this day, I always laugh when someone says, I heard a podcast and I heard your voice and I had to I had to reach out to you. And on my YouTube channel, I hear that all the time too. Like I heard your voice and I had to reach out to you.
That's crazy.
Yeah. He said, by your voice, they'll know you. I never knew what that meant. To this day. I still don't know. I had a woman after the Next Level Soul podcast with Alex Ferrari say, I heard your voice and it was the voice of an androgynous angel speaking to me. You weren't a female, you weren't a male. You have both equally. And I could hear it speaking to me, calling me that I needed to work with you. And that sounds so egotistical, but it's so common that people say, I heard your voice scrolling on TikTok, or I heard your voice scrolling on YouTube, or I heard your, and it's always that same phrase, I heard your voice. So then I know that they were one of the contracts that were miles long that I needed to reach. And so, yeah, that's the near death. I came back about, I remember that we talked for a long time, but again, I don't remember all of it. The most important parts that I took away was that I had already judged myself, that I had signed on for this life, that there was nothing but love, that we're all in different life paths. That was huge for me because I think there's a cookie cutter concept of religion, especially, but we're all supposed to get married. Women are supposed to do this. We're supposed to have 2.5 kids, a dog named Rover. It's not like that. And I didn't remember that, I think, until I saw my first a friend of mine 2 years later at 19 had died. He had an alcohol problem and ended up doing something that cost him his life, negligent action. And everybody's like, oh my God, that's the saddest thing. That's horrible. That's so terrible. And I remembered at that time bringing through that consciousness, but I didn't remember it until that moment. And that's the way it happened, is everything that he said to me was a download that could only be activated in the time it was meant to. It was like he downloaded me with time logs that it was unbelievable. To this day, I still have not stopped uncovering the things and I never know it until it happens. And I go, oh my God, I remember we're not supposed to be. There's a life path with the guy this is hard for a lot of people, but the guy that's sitting at the 7-Eleven, the drunk that's sitting beside the door, that is his actual life path to experience in this life. And they're like, how can that be? And I go, I didn't know about reincarnation. That was just such a foreign Eastern metaphysical idol worship and ideology that it was taught. It was like they will go to hell and that's the only life they'll have, and they've missed the boat, and reincarnation was like absolutely foreign. And I think that's probably why I was there a month because I was so resistant for a minute. My mind was like, well, that's not, but I knew everything that it was saying was in perfect truth. It was in perfect reality, perfect harmony. But the man that was at the 7-Eleven that was dying of alcoholism had previously been a very rich man, and there had been a beggar, and he'd ignored the beggar, and he let the beggar die on his doorstep in the cold, and he never gave him anything. He was so wealthy and so prideful, and that was the life he lived. There was no judgment for that, but the only way to ascend his soul was to go back and be the beggar. There was no balance. It wasn't forced. There was no judgment to it. It was that, okay, my soul is stuck at a 3 because I'm still choosing materialism, greed. I'm still choosing the me center over the you or the us or the we or the collective. So I'm stuck at a 3 in heaven. And the only way to get to the 4, which is like leveling up on Super Mario, is to go back and just be the beggar and get it done. So to that soul, I remember this download came sitting outside of a 7-Eleven. My husband went in to get a hot dog, and I'm over here having a revelation that the guy sitting here wanted to die as early as possible. His goal was to get in and get out. He did not want to live to 70 as a beggar, an alcoholic, dying of liver disease or dialysis. He wanted so badly to get in and out, but he couldn't end his life. I remember that was part of his contract, was he couldn't end his life. He had to live very impoverished. No matter what he tried to do, he could never scrape anything together. He wasn't with his soul family, so he didn't have people to come in and to save him basically in this life. His whole contract was get in, get out, and be done with it so I can have the experience. And then he could balance his soul so he can ascend higher in that other side, right? Like, thank God you did a great job. The original beggar is probably over there at his party, homecoming, cheering for him like, you did it, because he was the rich man before he was the beggar too. You know what I'm saying? So there was just
Absolutely.
it's been an incredible journey, but I came back into the body. This whole world of knowledge, an encyclopedia of knowledge was in me, and I couldn't do anything. I woke up in this, to be graphic, it was a pool of blood. It was like a Kool-Aid stained Kool-Aid pool. The water was still warm, not hot, or it was still cold. It wasn't hot at all. There was no warmth. Maybe 15 minutes had passed. I couldn't tell you. I knew that everything had dried. It was just dark, 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 dark. I got up, I washed my face, and I was like, oh my God, what just happened? I thought, man, I was really high. Like, then I thought I died. Then I thought I was going back and forth in the human mind. I called my girlfriend in there. She came in there. They got me dressed. I was telling her I died. This just happened. And she's like, we need to call 911. She told the guys, and they were like, she's sitting up talking to you. She obviously can't be that bad off. They were in no way going to call 911 with drugs in this hotel room with an underage girl that had just OD'd. That was never going to be part of the plan. They got me up. They got me dressed. She goes, walk it off with her. And we went to a Taco Bell. Like, we were in a hotel on a strip with a Taco Bell two buildings down, and she left me there. And I called my aunt, waited 30 minutes to be picked up. I mean, I would have died right there, but it was God's universal plan, my plan, a conjoined plan for me to stay. And that was the near death that I had remembered again, as I say, it's like levels that there's cheat codes. I've had these cheat codes or hacks that have constantly came back to me throughout my, what I learned at 30, I could not have gained at 20. You know what I
Right. It
mean?
would have been lost on you.
It was lost on me. It was. That's why I'm glad our subconscious holds all knowledge that we receive. We don't really forget anything. I did learn that when we die, the whole thing where we go through our life review is actually taking the download, and we're uploading it into our consciousness. When we see, they say from the moment of our birth to our death, everything flashes before our eyes. It's literally a flashing because it's a flash drive taking all of that with you for the life review process. You're downloading, you're taking it with you, so nothing is forgotten. Nothing is ever, you can't look back on it and tell a story. You can't retell it with a faded memory. It's like in 3D, bold print, 2 screens, IMAX theater, everybody's watching. You're all together. So there's people think they're going to stand up there in judgment and they're going to be pleading their case. There's no judgment. Religion is a story. It's a great story, and it's got a great hook that if we can convince you that you are missing something to get back to there, we can sell it to you, and therefore you'll fall into it with us. It's a great storyline, but there is no judgment, and you plead nothing. You can't plead anything because it's all known. Everything is a known thing. Nothing is hidden, and all is common knowledge.
Wow. You articulated that so beautifully. What I'd love for you to expand upon now are these different downloads that have been coming in since the age of 17, these different revelations. Will you share a few of them that really stand out that you have now come to understand that you did not have when you came out of that first near death experience at 17?
I really didn't have anything. The only thing, to be honest, the only thing I took with me at 17 was that we we are not born in original sin. I know that's hard. That gets me a lot of because I work with so many Christians. I myself am of the Christ consciousness and I love it and believe in it. So, but that's very hard because that undermines a lot of things, that we're not born in original sin, that really demotes the idea of salvation. Why did we need Jesus and all of these things? But it's not, I do remember that. It's not that I wasn't born into a sin, and things that were done to me are not my sins. So if anybody is a victim of anything that is not, even if you feel you contributed, if you were the victimization of someone else's free will of any kind, that is not on you. And you need to release that and try to get back to the love you were created in, because we were all created in love. I was very suicidal at 17. I'd already attempted it. I had no value in my body. Like I said, as a young girl, it was all judgment based on sexual appeal or fitness or body image. So when I came back, that's what I did remember is God loved me, if you want to call it God. It's the center within us. The source I came from loves me very much. I am part of source. I'm never separated from source. And that feeling was euphoric, and it stuck with me for probably a good year to 2 years. It does fade, I have to say. The idea that we're made in perfection, we are perfection, we go back to perfection, and everything we're doing is to perfect ourselves, right? We leave the presence of source, and we're doing all of this because we want to learn and individualize, and we want to go back to source in perfect love. And that's really all it is. Everything we do here is like a child getting out of a playpen and learning to experience the world like a parent would allow them to experience, falling down, standing up, making friends, having a first kiss. It's the love, it's a nurture. But when I first came back, the only thing I realized is I didn't want to kill myself. I did want to say this. You don't get out of it. Like, they told me if I had decided to let myself die in that OD, I would have there'd have been no judgment. I would have missed all those soul contracts. So 3 or 4 other guardians would have had to take on all my contracts. And I knew that eventually I would still choose to come back down and do it all over again, because I didn't want to stay in. From what I understand and the way that it's always been explained, and this revelation has never changed, heaven is a place of levels. Angels, there's 9 realms. They're all leveled up to the seraphim, which is the closest to source. Humans are leveled, but not because of judgments. It's because of our own soul's choice and decision. We're all beautiful. We're all universal beings of light. We all come from source. But depending on the amount of our experiences, we're all trying to get to a place where we can be in oneness with the great sacrifice, with source, and with pure love. And without suffering, there's no compassion, right? Without sickness, there's no health. You can't understand one side of it if you've never had the other. And so a soul truly that wants to become like embodied in awakeness or consciousness has to be those things that suffer, or they have to be those situations. So God doesn't ever force you. And that's really something I teach, because clients say every day, like, I would never choose this. I would never
Everybody
choose this.
always says that.
God,
Everybody says
and
that.
as a coach, I'm an energetic coach, and I have so many clients that are like, Sunshine, I would never choose this. And I go, well, that's number one. We speak voice activated. I did choose to individualize from source to become who I'm meant to be, to fulfill my destiny and return to source. That's it. Book closed. Like, it's a simple thing, but it's hard to accept. But remember, we looked at this life when I was up there for any period of time. We were almost laughing about everything that happened down here. We were
Yes.
laughing about it. And I can't get people to understand. We're literally laughing at each other. I remember there, oh God, I lost my temper. I don't know, maybe I was like a young mom. I have 4 kids, but I had like 3 kids at the time. I'm trying to get the car, trying to put one in the car seat, one in the basket of the car seat, in the front of the buggy. Then I'm trying to put my other 2 kids in. The thing is rolling away. I'm so mad. I'm starting to scream. And I could just remember when I was in heaven, I could hear my guardians laughing at me. Like, they laugh at us and we lose our temper. We act completely foolish. Like, they laugh. I remember telling him, he said to me, I'll see you AD. And I go, yeah, not if I see you first. We were laughing about this, like, AD. I didn't even think of that until years later, what that meant. It's after
After
death.
that.
Yeah, I'll
Yeah.
see you AD. Like, it's something you would joke about your guides, but like, you're gonna flop, like, you're gonna cry. And we laugh about it. Like, look at you, you were crying. God, like, look at you losing your temper. Like, it's not judgment. It's honestly because we forget who we really are. You're a king or a queen in the heavenly realms. You're like, I'm a doctor over there, right? I'm a healer. And here I am crying because I don't know, I'm crying over something silly. Like, I have a migraine. Oh my God. It's something that we're looking at how limited we are in the body, because we have only so much of our awareness is so limited, and we have to choose. That's one thing I did remember, is we have to choose to allow the higher oversoul to come in through these injunction points. And so,
Okay, that's that. I want you to expand on that a little bit more. And I also want to say that I'm super glad you shared this about us laughing about what we've chosen. I
yeah.
also remember watching a woman who had a near-death experience where she's on the other side with her spirit guides and she's decided to come back, and she's joking around about what would her life look like if she had a brain injury? What if she did, let's take one arm away? And she and her spirit guide were laughing about it, because really, I think the bigger message is that on a soul level, we cannot be harmed.
You can't be. That's the whole thing. It's like exactly what I was going to say. It's like Super Mario. You just spawn back, you respawn. Even, we look at, God, I want to say this with, like, again, I want to preface that it's never right to do anything that's self-harming. It's against all laws of nature and spirit, and you don't get out of anything. So you just come back. You just come back. You're not forced to, but you will want to, because you'll be like, this is all you could do. You only made it 19 years, brother. Come on. You had all these contracts.
Exactly.
And then your friends come back and they go, dude, you were supposed to help me get out of alcoholism at 27. You were supposed to go through my divorce. You just outed. You just left the game. Like, are you kidding me? You just got out and left. Like, you were supposed, your mom's like, you were supposed to help me when dad died. There's no judgment, but you're sitting around almost like in the fire place having a barbecue, like, dude, I can't believe you did this. It's like, throwing the game at the end of the ninth inning, or at the end of a football game, and you throw it. But that's one thing I do remember. And the other is points of activation.
Okay, explain that. What do you mean by points of activation?
So they say we only use 3 to 10% of our brain. That is correct, but that's because so much of our brain is the spiritual, pineal, metaphysical, healing part. And it's also, so let me just go back a little. When we're in the body, we are not fully incarnated. We are absolutely not fully incarnated. Jesus was actually the only one. He was the most incarnated spirit ever. He's been incarnating. He was the first. That's why I said the first. He was the first, and he's been incarnating through all of time. So he is revered not because of the religious construct, but because they tried to create something around him to make it more special. But really, if you just know the truth, it's already so incredibly special. But he was able to embody almost his entire oversoul into the physical incarnation. That's why he's the ascended master. Buddha did this. Krishna was able to do some of this. Again, it's not only one. There's many Christs, but he's the pinnacle of all of this because he was able to incarnate his oversoul entirely and overcome all the physical dimensions, okay?
Oh
We
shoot. I just feel like I'm totally screwed because I was shown from the other side that the amount of my oversoul in this body was like a pinky fingernail.
It is for all of
Oh my
us.
God. Like, how far do we have to go, sunshine?
It's not about time. It's about allowing. It's always ready. Your oversoul is always ready to come in with you, but it's always about removing and sanctifying, like purifying is what I'm always saying. And the one tribe we teach spiritual practice, like, can we not watch TV for a week and just let some more of your spirit come in? Or can we fast on one day a week or one day a month? And can we just allow like more of your oversoul to help you with challenges? It's all about letting it. And so many people don't realize, like, I talked to an angel or I talked to God or I was channeling the spirit. You're actually just channeling your oversoul. And the way I put it is, I'm here. My oversoul, the higher sunshine, is above me and it sits in heaven with God at all times. Your oversoul is never lost. It is never away from you. And it is always in perfection with God. Your only job in this life is to channel more of that oversoul through the Christ consciousness or whatever. And it is to become a version of your higher self. That's actually what I was told life was. I had a second near death experience when I had my heart attack and had heart surgery. And I was in an arrhythmia for 7.5 minutes, and my heart stopped for a little over 2 minutes. But I remember being totally conscious. And this happened in 2001. And during this opportunity, I was shown that my oversoul would come back and I would be 7% more. Don't be ungrateful. Don't be unhappy. Don't be scared. We had to basically let you die a little because you had still so much construct that we needed to move that out so more of your oversoul could come in so you could accomplish your purpose. The oversoul, it's not anything you have to do. Again, they didn't say you had to go join this or that or baptize yourself 100 times or, walk on broken glass or go to, the Vatican. It's about releasing the constant constructed reality and allowing the oversoul to come through. Sometimes it's going to be through profound experiences, and other times you'll just be sitting in your pajamas in your bed and you're like, you know what? I don't think this church is true, or I don't think, and boom, just right there, you're getting the download that night when you're sleeping, and you wake up more in tune with your oversoul. You ever seen somebody, they're crying and they're so depressed, they're so upset over their divorce, or they're so upset over this, and you see them a week later and they're totally at peace, like, you know what? This is for the best, because the oversoul has finally come in when they let go of that construct. Like, I need him, I need this, I need that. The constant desire, when it moves, then the oversoul is able to come in more. And that is the consciousness, both of God and of Christ. That oversoul is a part of that consciousness. But yeah, that's all we're here to do, is become your higher self.
So a lot of people that I talk to wind up having abilities that they didn't have before. So what happened to you? What type of abilities have you developed?
Well, I'm going to tell you, everybody has forms of these abilities. This is not individual to me only. However, I didn't really understand what I had until recently. Quantum physics is now experiencing. So I'm going to explain this concept, then I'm going to tell you why. They talk about a theory called quantum entanglement. It sounds very, very difficult, but they have videos that explain it quite simply, and I'm going to make it a really simplified version. Two particles are divided and they're identical particles. If you move them from one side of the universe and one is here and one is there, if you begin to turn one, because they were first one, okay, they were one particle and they were split from the same source. And if you move one to the other side of the universe, and then you begin to rotate that one direction, the one that is still remaining will begin to rotate in a similar direction. If you rotate it the other way, this one over here will rotate the other way. Quantum entanglement, they're both connected singularly, even though they're separate. When I crossed over at 17, I believe I became quantum entangled with the other side, or the other realm, the higher form, because I have never been able to not channel. And even though I've rejected that calling for so many years, I actually had that calling in little bits and pieces after my near death, but it was just like little thoughts and things like that, Lori. I would tell a woman that was working as a checker at the gas station, you need to leave your boyfriend, you're in danger. I didn't know how I knew it, but I just knew to say something like that. I remember telling a trucker in a truck stop, your tires, your back two tires are going to shred and you're going to jackknife. You're going to wreck your truck if you don't get your tires repaired, please. I like took his arm and said, please. He was like a middle-aged man, like, get off of me. But he did it because it was such uh, an eerie unction for some stranger to tell you this. And I can tell you, I've never really had any of the messages I've given be rejected. People always feel there's something very accurate or very chilling about what I'm saying because it never comes from me, it comes through me. And it began like that, but I never gave into it. I worked, like I said, I went to BYU for medicine. Then I was in the United States Army for 7 months. I had a heart condition, but I served as an operating room technician. Then I went on to surge tech school. Then I went into paramedic school. Then I was going into medical school. And during the surgery, a young man died on the table. I saw a light go into his mouth and two lights go out of his mouth. And I knew that a spirit had come to get him and he was safe and okay. So I delivered my first message to his mother. She only spoke Spanish, and I told her, your son is okay. Wrong message to give, worst message. I was so traumatized because she thought I said her son was alive. I wasn't saying that. I was saying he was okay, like he was taken to heaven. I had to have a translator say, and then I started to walk away in tears because she was so upset. Like they could sue me for saying that because I was trying to give her a message of peace, but I delivered it so poorly um, that I walked away and spirit told me to go back. It was the first time I ever heard spirit clearly, within my own, not outside of me. It's always inside of my head, but clearly said, go back and tell her mother came to get her son. And I thought, what, why would I say that? I don't know who her mother is. What if it's wrong? What if I look silly? What if the what ifs paralyzed me. But I had this push on me to just turn around. So I walked back and told her 16-year-old son, tell her I'm sorry for upsetting her, but her son is okay. Her mom came to get him. And his eyes got so big and he started to turn to his mother in Spanish, very, rush Spanish. He told her that her mother had came to get her son. And then she started just crying, oh, de Dios, like God is with me, and she hugged me, like just took me and hugged me so tight. And I realized like these messages are the healing I wanted to do as a doctor was the healing I would be doing, but only in spirit. And her mom had died of cancer a week earlier.
Oh my goodness. Wow. And
Her
that
son,
began this journey of you doing this international, you call it channeling mediumship, which might be a little bit different than what somebody thinks of when they just hear about a medium. So we explain the difference.
yeah, so a lot of people do use the terminology psychic medium. I don't, because I don't want to ever give the impression or believe that this gift is mine. I don't believe that I have just this incredible knowingness and it's all me and it's all within me. I don't know anything but what spirit shows me. I don't know anyone except what spirit gives me. And so I want to always give that glory or that, authority back to spirit and not take it as my own, so that it doesn't become an ego mask, that I begin to identify it, that I am the medium, I am the channel, I speak for everybody and all source. Channeling is about purifying the actual, just purifying yourself to receive the message. And so that's why I say that I'm a channeler, because I do channel for people. Obviously, angels, I'm able to communicate with higher beings. That didn't start. Actually, the angels were easier. That was almost with me from after my near death, but channeling people was a little different. And I didn't really enjoy it at first. So I only channeled for children because their messages were always so pure and so full of love. They were always gratitude and thanks. And it was resolving the parents of guilt, blame, shame of their death. So I kind of like, adults are different and humans are different, but I've now done this 150,000 times. But I never, every single person that ever came to me, I never sought them out. They always found me. They always were called to come to me. And, I've never changed the process from day one to now. I say just a prayer to open up the channel of spirit, and I ask only the highest good to come through, and that let all messages be edifying for the client, for myself, and that they leave healed and they get the counsel and healing that they need. And you know what? It's never went wrong.
Wow. So you said that you have done about 150,000 readings, but I know you've also been involved in some pretty high profile cases where you've been called in. Will you explain that a little bit?
So I wasn't called in on the cases. I was contacted by family members of the people, not directly. These are all after the fact. So this was not in the highlight of the media frenzies or anything. I did a reading for, I'm not going to talk about the victims. I'm only going to say the people. So I have read for the Green River Killer, his very first victim. She had already been passed over 25 years at the time I did the reading. It was still clear as day. Was very able, because we all have guardian angels. So I actually don't connect to the person that passed. I actually connect to the angelic telepathy. So rather than talking to a spirit of a dead, there is no death, but I don't directly connect to them. I have an angelic connection through myself, and then I connect to their angels, and it's all telepathically given. Okay. So it is a very different form of channel. It's a lot of mediumship. I don't use any divination. I don't use cards, crystals, or tarot. I don't use any way to divine the readings. And not saying that someone that does that, no hate, no judgment. It's just not the format that I use, because I don't want to rely on my own intellect and I don't want to get myself involved in the process. And so for this lady, they had always suspected her sister had died by the Green River Killer, but because he got prosecuted after, and there was so many killings after that, they had never prosecuted him for this one. So I was sought out by the family, a friend of the family that had watched my YouTube years ago and had asked whether I could connect, but they didn't give me any information, which I don't allow. I just say, don't give me information, please. And it came through in, very strong detail, all the things that had happened to her. But the family, that is why they had mourned. There was a lot of signs and symbols around this method, the way the killer did. And they thought that she had struggled through these things and they had never been at peace. But it was good to know that she was actually standing away from her body during this time, and that she was with angels and a grandmother was there. So that became their very first center of peace for her death. And it had been 25 years. Then I did a reading for a Sandy Hook family from a little boy. Well, I shouldn't say that. Just a child, not who gender wise. I did a reading for a Sandy Hook family and was able to bring peace, that he had seen everything they had done, the Christmas gifts, his memorial, the trees they planted, that they had another baby afterward. He had sent the soul of his brother. It's just amazing the healing they got, and that he was protected. He said, I was in this one spot and an angel came and covered me over, and then the angel took me by the hand and I left. And he had no awareness that he had ever been shot or anything. There was no awareness of that. And it was the family, the relief, that was with them was incredible peace. And that just has always stuck with me. So the Green River Killer, Sandy Hook, gosh, now you caught me on the line. There's so many. I've read for Brooks and Dunn. I've read for Reba McEntire's whole crew. There's a lot. I can't think of all of them right now, but that's the three that stick. So Columbine. Yeah, I read for a Columbine family, the son of one of the brother of one of the victims of Columbine. And I also read for yeah, two victims. So there was two different people. So Columbine, Sandy Hook, Green River Killer, and there's some other celebrity type things. But to be quite honest, my favorite readings are just for regular people. I was offered a show in Hollywood called Spirit Soul Seeker, and they wanted me to do readings for only celebrities. And I actually refused that because I believe celebrities are great, but they already have access to so much with money, wealth, fame, and power. And I also feel that they're so researchable that it's very hard to determine whether that's a contaminated reading.
Mm. Yep.
When you're seeing that on television, if you know how much goes into that, you can recognize that there's no one way to research a stranger with no details online because there's nothing written about it. To me, it's a more pure channel, and I want to reach the people that need to be reached, not necessarily for my celebrity status. I don't need it. It's always the messages for the person, right?
Wow, that's
So
amazing.
yeah, I just love what I do. I just enjoy it. I do it live. I do it through chat. I don't have to see a person. They don't have to be physically with me. I do readings just like this, obviously, because energy is everywhere. And I'm not connecting to you anyway. I'm connecting to the astral. And so it's a blessing. And then I started receiving past life downloads. That's something different I never thought I would do.
Oh, now that's really cool. Past life downloads for other people or for you?
Yes. No,
Oh,
no,
wow.
for others. That started coming through. I did a couple of sessions for some, let's take one, for instance. We're just going to call her Kelly. Kelly came to me because her husband had passed away. He had died of a heart attack at 32. So we did a reading. I found out during the reading her husband had came through, and he actually almost had a car fell on him 2 months before his death, but he had avoided it. And then he died anyway. And I have found that in 70% of my death cases, there was a near-death experience 2 years before that. So
Makes sense because nobody dies before their time.
yeah, and I do want to say that as well. And I'm working on a book series called When Spirit Speaks, and it's all about some of these things that I've learned. It's nothing that is my own knowledge. It's, to me, I take a very scientific approach to all of this. I believe you do need to be a skeptic. I think everyone should remain skeptical. I don't think this is a faith process. People tell me every day, I don't have faith in this. I go, great. It's not your faith that my gift works. It activates through my faith, not yours. And it should never be the chore of the client to have the right energy. I've heard clients tell me, I went to this. I'm not going to name the big names. I'm not going to do that. But I've had them tell me, I went to so and so, and they said, my energy was too low. I couldn't be read for. My loved one died too soon. My loved one's death was too tragic. Because it was a suicide, I couldn't connect because they're in hell or purgatory or they're doing some. Yes, I've heard all
That's
of it.
crazy.
I've heard them tell their clients that they would light a candle and it's $500 and they could
Come
stop their
on.
every day. This is why I constantly divide myself from the crowd. They'll tell them $500. I'll burn a candle. I'll save your loved one is wandering. Their soul is in between worlds. I've heard that you can't connect to someone that you didn't have an intimate relation. I mean, on and on and on and on and on. But the point to all of what I was saying is the connections can be made anywhere at any time. And the channeling part of it is just bringing that energy through. So yeah, it's a beautiful process and I enjoy doing it. With
No, go
Kelly,
ahead.
the past life download, we found out her husband had passed away. He had a near-death experience. He survived that. He brought his message through, but then he said, well, we were together before. And I had never heard that. This always started about 5 years ago for me because I don't think my construct, until I accepted the Hindu religion and started to study it, my construct expanded when I read the Bhagavad Gita and the story of Krishna. When I did that, it expanded, and I was able to then accept the concept of reincarnated creation more easily. And when that happened, my awareness began to allow more of the truth to come through because I couldn't accept it. So therefore I couldn't channel it, because again, it's all about removing ourselves so that God can come through us. He had said in the reading, you know, we had been together before. Well, she contacted me 3 months later from Alabama and said, I want to know what that means. So we went back and did a second channel session with her husband. And he said, we've been together. And in that life, she left me. So it was my turn. And I was like, what does that mean? And I said, Spirit, can you go deeper? And he said, not at this time, but just ask. Don't ask me, ask Spirit, you know, ask the Holy Spirit. Basically, the Holy Spirit is life source energy. That's what we call it. So I did. I said, I just want to go a little deeper. I'm going to say a prayer. I'm going to sit back and just see if I can access this through the Akash, which typically I speak directly to the angelic guides, but occasionally I've never really consulted the Akashic records. It's not something I was familiar with. So I consulted the Akash. So I asked in the channel prayer, can you please have a guardian of the Akashic give me any records related to Kelly and, we're just not going to say Matt, that's not their names. And I had found out that she had um, she had died of a laudanum overdose in, I think it was like 1904, or it was the early 1900s, and that they had lived they had left Boston to come toward Arizona, and it was so much like a Wyatt Earp story, but the details all worked out. And she said that makes sense because in this life he was an alcoholic and she had struggled with that. And they were only married. She was only 27, he was 32 when he died. So it was a very young life. And then after we did that, it came through her past life with him. It come through. She contacted me a few months later and goes, I can't get over this. How can I heal? So I went again back to source and we did another channel session, and they said she needs to remove the pain from the heart chakra, the sternal, the solar plexus, and the root chakra. And they said, just use your Reiki and do it with her. So I remotely did it, and we did a voice activation to speak into that. And her life changed immediately. She was able to get over the grief. She lost weight. She was able to start dating again. She was able to, I mean, it was like it healed that. And they say that that's the past. And they told me that there is no past, that everything is concurrent, consistently happening in a loop. And that when you heal yourself in this moment, everything before, behind, and around you is healed as well. So I basically had asked in a fast, because I do a lot of meditation and fasting. I do a lot of that. And so I asked, could I do this for everyone? And they said, yes, everyone. And I said, do I need to regress them? And they said, no, because it is not by their knowledge and power that you're coming into this. It's just Akashic information flowing. It's very simplistic. Because I am a hypnotherapist. I studied that as well, but I do not do it as a practice. I do not do hypnotherapy as a practice. And so that stands out as uniquely because if you know, I've had people now that are on my YouTube channel that have been regressed 10 times through traditional hypnosis and regression. And while they got something out of it, they said the difference was that with somebody that regresses you, you're dipping into different lifetimes like a salad bar, but they don't always know how to come back and integrate the information they heard. So the difference is with me is I only ask the oversoul and the guardians to give me past lives in which your energy is now stuck. I only want to see lifetimes where your energetic imprint is pinned to the past, stuck in the past, or traumatized in the past. So you're carrying the cellular DNA of that experience. And therefore and again, medical conditions are real. This is no way meant to treat, diagnose, or anything. But I have seen women come to me that were infertile and they had been molested, raped in past lives. They had had 6 kids. They had died in childbirth. And when I didn't know their story, but as soon as I told them the past life download, they were instantly relieved. They were in tears. They were able to make sense of it. And then we go in and we do the healing on the sacral chakra and the pain of birth. And people that have had PCOS are now able to bear children because that was their body manifested. Not every course, there's hormonal imbalances, and there's a whole medical component saying this is entirely spiritual. However, Whatever the spirit believes, the body conceives and it brings into manifestation. So I've had women that had so many polycystic, conditions they couldn't bear children. We did the healing of the death of childbirth or the sexual abuse, any of that, they've been able to heal from that and move forward. And now I've been doing this for 16 years full time. I have clients that have been with me the whole, and I have spirit, they call me spirit mama. I have all these little babies that I have pictures of because we did the healings and things like that.
That's why the placebo effect is a real thing.
We're all supernatural. Joe Dispenza said it.
Yes.
I just taught with Joe Vitale about manifesting your higher self a few months ago, excuse me. And we were talking about this, and I go, this is the greatest secret, is not that, not who Jesus was, but who we are.
Mm. Because he said, whatever works I've done, you will do greater.
He said everything it says, first of all, if they had written all the things that Jesus did, the world cannot contain the books.
Wow, really?
Yes, he said that with the faith of a mustard seed, which was the example of the smallest seed, that you could move mountains, and that it truly is. Why do you gawk and wonder at what I do? You shall do this and many more things than I have done. Than I have done. And I do remember there was an imbalance with the masculine and feminine of God. And that's something that I do a lot of, is rebalancing the Magdalene. I told you that before we got started about the Magdalene effect.
Yes.
So just when I went in my near death, when I came back from the heart attack one that I had in 2001, I ended up having like a 6-hour surgery, and I've been great ever since. It's been a beautiful thing. But they showed me again, this was like a third life path. So the first near death was my first cycle. Then after that, I had another out of body near death, but I was still alive. We talked about that off camera too, how you can have a near death, but still be physically alive, but just tethered to the body while completely out of it.
Yep.
And in that one, I was shown, which is, I don't even really like to talk. This is so far out there, but I remembered I was laying on a table and my body was kind of almost like sleeping. And I was connected to this body, but this was an avatar. This is not my real body. This is an avatar body. And we are not human. We are spiritual. We're light beings of spiritual. We're a lot. We really are a lot. We just don't realize it in the physical incarnation. And I realized I had a mother and a father, which I had never really had in this life. It was so comforting to know that each of us, if you have a mother or father that disowned you, didn't want you, you don't relate to, you were abused by, that maybe they passed before you were born, or any of the myriad of circumstances that make you feel disconnected, know that you do truly have a spiritual family that loves you on the other side. Even if some are incarnated with you, you always have guardians, guides, angels on the other side that are guiding you through the process. And I got to meet those. My mother was here, my father was here, and they said, we're losing her, because at this time, for some reason, I had gotten very depressed, like super depressed. And I kept telling my family, I'm going to die. I'm going to die. It was the weirdest thing. They're like, why do you say that? And I kept saying, if something happens to me, know that I've loved you. And I was going through this whole near-death experience. And when I got up there, they go, why are you telling everybody that? You already died. And I go, what do you mean? And they said, you died to be born here. Don't you remember? I had forgotten that I had died there to be born here. And that was actually the scariest thing ever, was being born into the mother of your womb is the scariest experience you'll ever have.
Christian Sundberg talked about that in one of the interviews he did on my channel. I also want to say that when you started to say, I don't like to share this because it's too out there, I have a timer running because I make notes about editing while I'm doing these interviews. And I looked down when you said that, and it was 1 hour, 11 minutes, and 11 seconds.
111.
You knew it, and you knew it.
Yes, 100%. Because I don't know that the world is fully ready to integrate this knowledge, but I'm going to give it as a channeler. I'm here to help stay ahead of the integration. So you can't be a guide if you're behind everyone. You've got to stand in front and be a beacon. So the information that I received is that we're all very strong light beings. and that each part of our simulation is ordained. It's chosen by guides. Nothing is coincidental or accidental. If something seems accidental, it's simply because you diverted from your original path and now you're taking a parallel path, and they're having to catch up with that decision. So through every yes and no major decision you make, can't be small. It can't be like, should I have orange juice or milk? It has to be where that decision affects another person's contract. So should I stay with him? Should I stay with him? That is a spiritual contract that affects two people. So it's a nexus point. Depending on which direction you go, you will have coincidences on either. If one was the original path and you diverge, you're going to feel this sense of coincidence. But over here, you're going to feel a sense of trying to think of the right word, where you've lived something before and you're going back to it again.
Like
Deja vu.
serendipity or deja vu.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
So when you're on the path you originally chose, you're going to get many similitudes of deja vu. But if you decide to go to another alternate parallel choice, then you will feel coincidences. Like, that's weird. I just said that name, or that's weird. The number's showing up, because they have to show you in two different ways that you're still being guided along that path to get you back onto your original blueprint. And everyone comes with a blueprint. And we need a lot of people to activate into the healings, into the teachings, the human design, the meditation, the guidance, the sound healing. All of this frequency has to come so many people can get into their path and move forward, because we're moving at a higher timeline. They showed me that we only have a 9-month year now. So we don't have a 12-month year anymore.
I've never heard anybody say that before.
That's why nothing is on point. The weather is off. The planet is off. Christmas doesn't feel like Christmas. Thanksgiving doesn't feel right. October is the only month
Everybody said that this year's Sunshine.
we were in
Everybody.
this is the year we moved into a 9-month. This is the only year. We were at a 10-month. It's moved quicker and we're in a different timeline. This is a 9-month. Right now, we should be celebrating Christmas right
And
now.
this is 2025, early
Yeah.
2025 as we're recording, because these
But
videos live in perpetuity.
Yeah. In the old timeline, we would still be in 2024 right now. In the old timeline.
Huh. Wow. Well, I would imagine that the people who are watching would want to contact you to work with you in some way, shape, or form. So, will you tell everybody what you still offer, what you do, and how people can connect with you and your book that's coming out?
Yeah. So my name is Sunshine Frost. That's my real name. And it's very simple. It's just sunshinefrost.com. You can actually Google my name. I've been in books and magazines and publications and podcasts and this and that. But it's very simple. What I do is I channel information for persons. So there's a life reading, which is like me and you. I don't do anything but just align myself to source, and I connect to your higher self. And through your higher self, I channel information back to you regarding what's happening in your current life. That's why it's called a life reading. It's what's happening in the physical. Then we have one called the Oracle, which is where we go in and we channel information from past, present, and it's loved ones. So that information is like sometimes one or two loved ones, but you can choose who you want to connect with. That was something I did know that wasn't common. People go to a medium, I guess, they can't choose who comes through.
Right.
I only connect to the person that you need to connect with, and I guarantee 3 points of validation for every reading, or your money goes back to you.
Wow. Have you ever had to give any money back?
No.
I figured you were going to say that.
But I have turned down 12 readings because of negative circumstances, or the energy surrounding it was really negative.
Oh, wow.
I
Fascinating.
turned them down because the energy just wasn't right. I was like pushing, and they were pushing on me, because sometimes you'll gift somebody and they don't want this because it's outside of their belief system. They don't
Sure.
feel their loved ones are real. They're very fearful. Like, there's no reason to be in fear, honestly. But if someone's not ready, I say don't push it on them. Let them catch up to themselves in the right time. And then also, I hate to say this on live, but one was a pedophile, and it was a victim of it, and I didn't feel comfortable connecting their energies.
Yeah.
So I chose not to do that because the spirit, her higher self said she's not ready to accept this message and don't proceed. I have been asked to connect to like famous people or I had a woman come to me to connect to an ex-husband that he had divorced her, and he didn't want to connect to her. I like, honestly, it wasn't her place. He had remarried. She had no children with him. I felt it was a breach of contract to be giving her intimate details when he had chosen to end that relationship before they passed. But I do connect exes all the time, just not in that circumstance, because there was some really bad, whatever the situation was, it was not spiritually lawful to do so.
You just listen to spirit and you're guided that way.
Yeah, but honestly, 150,000 sessions, I've done them on the radio and stuff. We've done over 99 in a row and had really great results. But yeah, so I'm a clairvoyant. So I see it in my mind's eye and I channel that and I'm wide awake, just like I'm talking to you now. And I do those live, actually. I do them 2 nights a week. I just started on TikTok. I'm gonna see how I
Which
like
is
that.
interesting because over the weekend TikTok got shut down and then I heard it got back up again.
You know, we predicted this a year ago. I told people like this is gonna be the election. TikTok's gonna go. It's gonna come back. I told them all that, and they were
It
like,
happened like within the day.
"Yeah, no, I said that. Don't worry." They're like, "No, it's dying." I said, "It'll be fine."
Otherwise, I think there were a lot of content creators on that were going to have to leave the country.
Yeah, they were gonna. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So just going to Sunshine Frost, there's like 5 sessions that you can choose from. The life reading is about anything currently happening where you need advice. You're off your path. You have lost your blueprint. You're not intuitively just able to see the insights. Maybe you're in it. And this is about what is in your life. Then we have the Oracle, which is a channeled message. That is from specific loved ones. Okay. And then I have the past life download, which helps people with fears, phobias, relationships they can't break, right? If they've broken up and they can't get over somebody, there's a reason. It's a soul contract, it's a spiritual unction. We need to clear it. We need to figure it out. And then the other one is the healing. I help people clear things in their own life. Sometimes people come to me. I've trained with, Gucci, Ford Motors, real estate companies, because they're like, you're a business medium. You can tell me if my business will fail before I open it. Yes. I train employees how to deal with the energies of clients, not the person, not their ego. We go back to the energy of all things. So it's more like being a doctor of energy is really, that's the theme. That's the framework. If you can work with, see, and be able to clearly communicate energy, everything else is above, everything else is easy from that point. But the healing and then the coaching, I work with people to stay on their path. So if they're trying to open businesses, they're trying to have babies, they're trying to have relationships or heal, or whatever it is, there's levels. So yeah, that's what I do.
That is amazing. We've been talking for a little while, but it went so fast, and I still could sit here for at least another hour and pick your brain because I have learned so much. I think that you are such an interesting mix of right brain, left brain. You've done so much to validate both of those things, and you've definitely been the first person I've talked to who has a quantum connection to the other side and been able to tap into that after their NDE. So I think this is absolutely fascinating.
I did want to mention my Patreon. So we're going to have the
Okay.
books, meditations, classes, DVDs, and live. I do a thing called the Inner Temple Symposium. It is like a church with the unchurching of America. It's about church hurt, and we don't go into any of the dogma. It's specifically about individual choice to raise up into our higher self through sanctifying, not sin. We work on being better people and we support each other in everything. And it's called the Inner Temple Symposium. And we learn both the masculine and feminine aspects of God. So we learn about the Book of Mary and the Magdalene. As I was saying, I get called the Magdalene a lot. People say that's the energy that I carry. I'm very happy to carry the Magdalene energy. But yeah, Patreon, it's Dr. Sunshine Frost.
Okay. I will put all of this information down in the show notes. So I want to thank you for what you are doing, because we all know as light workers, we have come in because we wanted to, not because we had to help affect the energy of the collective consciousness. And it's all really coming to a big head right now. And so I want to thank you for what you are doing. Thank you so much for coming on and talking to us. And thank you everybody for watching. Next up, check out this playlist of other NDE interviews. Please like and subscribe. It really helps this channel to grow so I can bring you more content. Thank you for watching. I'm so glad you're here.